Welcome to another Digital Anarchy tutorial. I'm Tor Olson, Software QA here at Digital Anarchy, and today we're going to be taking a look inside of Adobe Premiere Pro at one of our new plugins, the Light Wrap Fantastic. For the uninitiated, when it comes to green screen footage, Light Wrap is a method of helping out your composite and make it look a little more seamless and realistic. What it's supposed to imitate is the bending of light around your subject. That happens in real life when you're dealing with any kind of light, whether it be outdoor or indoor lighting. So we've got this example here of our model. You might see a little bit of spill. This is a video with an alpha channel. We noticed that key light from After Effects works a lot better than the Ultra Key here in Premiere. So we went ahead and just output that from After Effects and brought it in as its own clip right here. And if I turn on the background that we're going to be using for this example, you can see that our model looks really flat in relation to the space that he's supposed to be in, which is this well-lit office. It's very apparent that he was shot on a green screen because the lighting is very flat. There isn't really a lot of dimension here because we wanted to keep the lighting nice and flat to make it look consistently green to make the chroma key a lot easier on us. But we've got to fix that. So with our foreground image selected, I'm going to go into the effects and find Light Wrap Fantastic. Alright. And we're going to just click and drag it onto our footage. Now, you won't have noticed anything yet. That's because our background color is not noticeable enough. If I were to select something much more pronounced, like a bright red, you'll see that we've got this effect on the border right here. Now the way that Light Wrap works is that it's either taking a background color or referencing a background in order to create the light wrap that'll make our composition look seamless. So while I could choose a color from our background, say this kind of yellowish, orangish light, and use that, I can also go into this background drop-down and select the video channel that we want to reference. In this case, we're going to choose our lounge layer down here in video 1. So I just select video 1, and we are now referencing the background. Now, it's a little hard to see the effect that we're having here. You can kind of notice it, but you'll notice it a lot easier if I turn on our color matte, which is this kind of gray that works as a great contrast against the brightness of our light wrap. If I turn it off and on, you can see along his hairline and his shoulders especially the effect that we're having. This is rendering now in composite mode. Composite mode is layering the light wrap on top of our foreground image, but I can go into this drop down and choose wrap to exclusively show the light wrap that we're applying. And this also makes it a lot easier for us to go through all these parameters and see what each of them do. Now, because it's referencing our background image, you can kind of see some of the defining features from our background image, the chairs that were there, as well as the ceiling and the windows here and here. If I wanted to make that light wrap maybe a little more abstract, I could bring up the background blur. You can see a lot of those colors of the chair and the window are blending together a little bit more seamlessly. But for now, I'll bring that back down to 0. And we'll go into the other main parameters that govern how our light wrap looks, which are size and brightness. Both of them are fairly self-explanatory. If I were to increase size, it'll increase the size of our light wrap, how many pixels deep it's going into our layer. And if I were to crank up brightness, it'll make that light wrap a lot more apparent. Of course, generally when you're talking about light wrap, you want to have a very subtle effect. So keeping our size and brightness down is a good idea because we don't want our audience to notice the light wrap. It's something that should just lend itself to making the composition look more realistic and not like something you shot on a green screen. So for that, I would suggest maybe for this comp we'll bring this size down to about 40 or so, and maybe the brightness around, well, I mean, this is a very bright room, so maybe 75 or 80. So that gives you a general idea of what the light wrap is supposed to look like. We'll bring it back to our composite mode. And When I bring it back into composite mode, you'll notice that the blend mode lights up. Here I can choose a small list of blend modes that we have. If I want something more heavy-handed, I could select the Add Blend mode. But because we want a more subdued look, I think for this composition, we'll just set it back to soft light. Now down here is the mask style. In this case, we're just showing layer, which is layer showing a wrap along the edge of our entire layer here with our Ishmael alpha channel video. If I were to go into layer, we'll be also able to select gradient. And this parameter is more appropriate if you, say, had a window on the left or the right of our frame, in which case we would only have our light shining on one half of our talent. If I turn on Show Mask, we'll be able to see how this is working right now. Say I had a window over our talent's right shoulder. I could take the direction for our composition, flip it around. Maybe the ramp of the gradient is a little too slow. I want to speed it up a little bit more. I can also adjust its position so that I know only the right side of his body is being affected by that wrap. I can turn back on Show Mask. If I actually go back into wrap mode, we'll be able to see how that's impacting our image. So here I could maybe finesse it a little more, maybe move the position again. There we go. That's a little more like it. If we wanted to match having our light source on this side of the frame. Of course, you can also imitate this effect by putting our mask style back to layer and choosing a gradient, whether it be from an image that we bring in with an alpha channel or an image that's just black and white, in which case we would use luminance. And we would just select that layer from the drop down for mask input. And this is useful because you can bring in a composition, say, where your gradient is changing from maybe from the left to the right to reflect the sunset, or any other complex lighting, like having two light sources where one is stronger than the other. But both with gradient and messing with the mask input, this allows Light Wrap Fantastic to give you a little bit more control in terms of how you want your lighting to apply and how it can adhere to what your background is portraying in terms of its light. Now going back a little bit, we have this Scale Background checkbox. This is used for if you have a background image that is smaller or larger than your sequence settings resolution. So if you had a 4K background, for example, this would be able to scale it down in order to fit into the confines of your Light Wrap. Finally, Light Wrap Fantastic does have GPU support, so you can make a render happen a little faster with the aid of OpenCL or CUDA rendering. And it allows it to play back in real time, so I can actually just bring back all the assets to make it look like our model is in the space that he's in, which is this office lounge. Maybe I bring this back to add, since it's such a bright room, and maybe bring down the brightness a tad. And I can go ahead and press play. And you can see that light wrap is being applied throughout the entire clip. Here it is in composite mode. And if I turn on the color matte and switch it back to wrap, you'll be able to see just the light wrap itself. So just to reiterate, Light Wrap is really great because it makes for a better keyed image by blending the background with your foreground's edges, and it makes the composite look a lot more convincing with a really subtle effect that really sells what would otherwise look like a very flat image. So if you want to try this out in your own footage, you can go to digitalanarchy.com, where we have this plugin along with a lot of others and some other neat tutorials as well. Again, I'm Tor Olson, Software QA here at Digital Anarchy, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.